Welcome to Everything Life Coaching. I'm John Kim.
And I'm Noelle Cordeaux. We are the founders of Lumia.
And we're super passionate about all things coaching, and we want to share what we've learned from over a decade of coaching and training thousands of life coaches.
Let's dive into the science and magic of coaching.
Noelle and I are going to tackle getting unstuck. Noelle, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm well. I'm really excited about this topic. As I was writing it and coming up with the powerful questions to get you unstuck, I was kind of blowing my own mind and thinking about my own life. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to talk about this with John.
Yeah, I think this is so many people are stuck. And I actually like this concept of getting unstuck because I'm a visual person and I like seeing that. Like I like seeing that I'm in quicksand and I need to get out.
Yeah. Or just stuck to the ground. I had the visual of, a big ball and chain around your ankle where you're kind of looking out into the world and you're stuck in one place.
Well, let's tackle it.
So I've been messing around quite a bit with goal setting theory recently. And it's interesting to me, of course, as a veteran coach to do this work, because I don't think that the general population realizes that there's actually a science to setting your goals.
Right. So you're not just randomly setting goals, but there's a science, a structure, a strategy to it.
What goal setting theory tells us is that when we're looking at individuals who are prime movers, people that are recognizable globally, like I'd say Richard Branson is a good example of a prime mover, somebody that does stuff that changes society, changes the way that we think and move. These folks come up with goals that most people say that's impossible.
And isn't he also doesn't he own 100 companies or he's a part of? I don't know how he manages all that.
He's prolific. He's absolutely prolific as an entrepreneur. And all of the things that he's done have come from a place of concrete impossibility. You can't do that. And so, that's the high level. That's kind of like the role model there. And then taking it down to actionable work for us mere mortals, we know that when you set a goal, it should live just beyond the scope of your imagination, just beyond what you can actually imagine in your brain.
But also not far enough where it's just completely unrealistic, right? And how do we determine that?
I think that's where the tricky part is. And there's a lot of different ways there's a lot of different ways that we can attack it. But if we're thinking about setting a goal that lives beyond the scope of our imagination, that makes sense. Because if we're doing something new, if we're going to uncharted territory, we can't know what the goal state is going to be like. We can't craft a future vision that we can actually imagine. So step one is getting comfortable with this aspect of not knowing and maybe pulling in broad strokes of what we want or how we want to feel or some things that will change for us once we have transitioned or transformed.
What are some questions that can guide us to get us there?
So I always like to start in time frame chunks when we're looking at future vision because change doesn't happen overnight. So just as a foundation, I like to start with a 5-year structure with my clients because that's reasonable, that's actionable, and sometimes you have to coach with someone for a little while before you can even get to that place of, well, what do you want life to look like 5 years from now? If everything has gone as well as it possibly could. And the exercise that I like to use is a narrative exercise where you let your brain, your subconscious just imagine and not put any pressure on yourself and say, okay, you wake up in the morning, what do you see? What do you actually see? And walk through the day in your imagination and notice what your brain comes up with. For years, when I did this exercise, whenever my brain opened up the box of possibility, I started out in the kitchen of whatever home or space I was in. And that's totally me. I love to cook. I love to entertain. And then one day it shifted and my brain opens up in a workspace.
Oh, that's interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
From
Because
from food from food to work.
yeah, my priorities shifted. I think before we can, get into the powerful questions, we kind of have to look at what actually keeps us in stuckness. There's a big fear that most people face, and it's the fear of not having enough.
Absolutely. Not having enough. If things will ever come. Also not being enough.
Not being enough. Yeah, 100%. And this is one of those things where all of the things get to be true at the same time. It's real. Scarcity is real. Life is hard. Having deficits financially, mentally, emotionally, this is all real stuff. And it's also slippery due to looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the theory of adaptation. So we know that from Maslow, what our core needs are psychological safety, love, belonging, esteem, and self actualization. What is missing in that list based on the concept of not having enough?
Self-care.
That's not in there. Money is what I thought of. And that's where adaptation comes in and it gets tricky. So there's this tipping point, there's this balance. Several years ago, there was a very popular article that was floating around that said, if you make $75,000 a year, you're going to reach, your happiness point, and like that'll be it for you, and no more, no less, will make a difference. And I kind of said, oh, that sounds like bullshit. But as I've gotten older, and I've really started kind of examining this stuff, it's 75K per year might not be the number, but it's true. Once you get to a point of relative comfort, not fancy, but just stable relative comfort where your basic needs are met and you have that core stability, material gain won't actually increase your happiness. It won't actually increase the way that you feel about your existence. And if you do get bumps, it'll last only 3 months.
Yeah, you know what? This is really, I can relate to this so much because when I was working in nonprofit and I always felt broke and I was only making 36 grand a year. I was always in a state of fight or flight. I was always, even if it was subtle, there was panic, and it didn't get me to actually relax and be creative and not worry. And it wasn't until I had enough financial security where I just didn't have to worry anymore that I then felt more that I could thrive. And so you're right. It wasn't like, it's not like millions or anything, but it was just that tipping point, and maybe it's 75K. I don't know what that translates to today. And I'm sure it's different for the individual, right? Depending on your lifestyle, where you live and all that. But when you get to a point where you're not like, when you don't think the sky is falling, that's when you could really, I think, exponentially just kind of thrive in life.
And we live in a world and a society that tells us more is better. And it's really not. It's your mindset that if you can accept that your basic needs are met, if you can accept that you have enough, that you are enough, that's when you switch from this concept of abundance, this concept of scarcity to this concept of, what, I'm okay. What do I want to build from here versus what am I afraid of?
In the last 5 years, I've been obsessed with our states. I've been obsessed with dropping into our bodies and allowing that to be our radar more so than our logic, And for me, I've been logical for most of my life and hit a lot of cul-de-sacs, went down wrong roads. And when you get to a place where you feel not threatened and calm and not living in panic, then I think that you're able to intentionally live on a higher frequency. You're able to practice things like gratitude and seek joy. And and then when you don't dip, I think that kind of it just puts you into an attracting state.
Yes. So the powerful question here is, how would your life change today if you accepted that you have enough and you are enough.
Oh, I mean that would, I think, if you can get there, and I think what's hard is to really believe that you are enough. I think that's a journey to really believe that you have enough. But yeah, I mean, when you get there, it changes everything. You're no longer trying to escape. You've already arrived.
Yeah. And I think, with the pandemic, there's so much opportunity here because we're not able to focus on the outside world or zooming around or traveling. And you're forced to really sit with yourself and sit with your items. And there have been so many times where people have said, what do you want for your birthday? And I'm like, honestly, nothing. Like, there is nothing that I need. There's nothing that I want. Like, I have everything that I need. I have a roof over my head. I have people that I love. I have my doggy. I have a job that's great. And I'm good.
How would you get to a place where you feel that you have enough? And of course, it's okay to want more. Of course, you should build and expand and grow and all of that, or whatever's important to you, accomplish your goals. But how do you get to a place where you actually believe that you have enough, you think?
It's more about shifting your perspective towards what you want to call in versus what you want to avoid. And, that's the threshold. It's looking at your existence with joy and contentment and excitement versus scarcity. So, guys, for those of you listening at home, I live in a really humble little apartment in Philadelphia. It's 1,000,000 years old. It's rickety. My mom is like, oh, your kitchen, God, but I'm happy. Like, I'm happy here. I love the trees. I love the plants. I love the architecture and the limitations that the voices that say I should want more, I don't own my home, those are constructed. So it's a choice of waking up and saying, I think I'm going to take 5 minutes and read a book and sit in the sunshine and tuning into other forms of riches.
Yeah, and I will have to admit, and I don't want to blame it on me growing up in Los Angeles, but I'm definitely a lot more materialistic than Noelle. But I now believe at age 47 and have gone through some stuff that things, whether it be houses or motorcycles or whatever, we all want things. They're more of a byproduct of me swimming toward service and my true north and being creative and all of that. When I feel like I have a sense of purpose, to me, that's the goal, that's the value. And then usually what comes out of that, because you get obsessed with your purpose, is, you make more money or you have more financial security or you could then buy some things. But it's flipped where before I was just chasing the things. And I thought that when you have, the fancy car or the house in the hills or whatever, then that equals success. That was a blueprint that was in my brain for all of my 20s, most of my 30s. But now I feel like all of those are extra, and it's okay to want them, but they're the ripple of something greater that is not materialistic.
Oh, yes. And we know too that, those things will only give you excitement for about 3 months before you go back to the state that you were at before. And I think he said something really important. It's chasing your purpose. And that ties to activity, action, engagement, being engaged in your work, using your mind, investing in other people, investing in movements and growth and what you actually care about in the world and impact. There is nothing in this life that can replace taking action in life and creating impact and change, whether it's for yourself, for your family, internally, for society. That's where we find true and deep contentment. And that's where we need to imagine just beyond the scope of our imagination.
Yeah, and you know what? I love that you said whether it's for the world or for your family. because I think, especially today with social media, people think impact means you have to change the world. People think impact means you have to, throw some giant wide net and affect millions of people. And that's not true. You can impact your circle. You could impact your friends' lives, your family. And to me, that's just as important as, impacting the masses.
It is. It's deeply important. You can create impact by baking some bread for your neighbor. And those things, that's where the deep riches are. And then, too, on the flip side is, our imaginations are limitless, right? And so if we're really playing around with our imaginations and letting that muscle work, that's where you come up with the pie in the sky ideas. That's where you come up with the prime mover ideas that can change society and can change the world. So, they're two sides of the same coin, and they're both super valid.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, and this is what triggered, I triggered an image when you said imagination. I was thinking about me and my own story. One of the most powerful ways that I got unstuck was connecting to that fearless 13-year-old kid who locked himself in a room and played with Legos, and who was out spitting on his head, and who was just living life. And as a 47-year-old, when I do those things, when I and Legos to me is social media and helping people in different ways and playing around with all my pie in the sky ideas. I feel the most authentic. I feel the most light. I feel the most free, and I feel the least stuck. When I'm, on my motorcycle and I'm connecting to the spirit of that 14-year-old kid, or if I'm doing butterfly pull-ups or something where I'm tapping into that 9-year-old breakdancer in the 80s, I feel so unstuck. And so for me, I feel like getting unstuck, sometimes it has to do with a reunion, connecting to parts of yourself that you have locked away.
Yes. And I love that you brought up living in the mix, because really this whole concept of getting unstuck is all about facing the fact that you have one precious life. That's it. That's what you have. So, look at what you're doing with your time. Sometimes getting unstuck takes a huge reckoning. Are you spending your life sitting on a couch? Like, are you spending your life scared to go outside? Are you spending your life ignoring the relationships that sustain you? What are you doing with your time? And so, the powerful question here, and I'll give the caveat that this doesn't have to be a prime mover goal. It can be something like, hiking the Appalachian Trail, is what would you do, or what would you try if you knew you could not fail?
Yeah, and maybe one piece of that is to redefine what failure looks like. It's not so heavy, so it's not a giant stamp that says defective. I don't really see failure as failure like I used to. Today, I see it more as information and learning and growing.
It is information and learning. And, what we know from coaching and goal setting theory is that when we're working with clients very strategically in this way to set goals, set a plan, take action steps, experiment, sometimes when you start out on the path, things don't work. And it would be absolutely foolish just because you made a plan to keep going down a road that is clearly the wrong road. And so it's really, a matter of being smart and looking at what's actually real and true in front of you, and then regrouping and making decisions to go in another direction.
There's something exciting about the giant what if in a positive way, and can I do it? Can I get away with it? As I'm talking to you, I'm actually in my car doing this podcast, and I was telling Noelle, and this is the first time I did a podcast in the car, and due to circumstances, I wanted to do this episode. And then I said to myself, as fear kicked in, like, oh, that's not appropriate. You should go into a soundproof room and blah, blah, blah. I started asking myself, well, maybe I could pull it off. Maybe it will sound good. Maybe I can execute this via, a way that I give myself a new experience in being completely mobile and podcasting. And so then now I get excited about it. And then here I am in real life attempting it, hoping
Yes.
that if I
Guys.
fail, then it is information. And then some people will be mad at me and hopefully
John and I go to great lengths to record this podcast. We have done some weird things collectively.
Yes. But that's the beauty of it. And I think that when people listen to that, it's going to hopefully encourage them to do that as well. I think safety, although important sometimes, can make your life stale. And so even something like this, podcasting an episode in your car, knowing that you could lose connection or it could be loud or whatever, there's an excitement to that. And this is just me, but that's what gets me to live and be very present.
Yes. Yeah. So, we're actually, following exactly where we need to go here in moving to action. And, whether it is making sure that we're going to do a podcast, or whether it's, getting out of bed and, doing something different with your day, not looking at your phone first thing. Inaction, letting things stay the same or not trying new things, not taking action is what will actually kill your soul and kill your dreams.
Yes. And let's end with this question. What excuse will you give yourself at the end of your life if you never try?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, very important question. And we're not ending with this to be dramatic, but it's something to think about. And hopefully, if you can answer it, it will push you forward.
Yes. If you can answer it, it will push you forward. And, yes, these powerful questions are really heavy hitting. So the powerful questions to get you unstuck are: how would your life change today if you accepted that you are enough and you have enough? Boom, that's your threshold. So from there, what would you do or try if you know that you have enough and you knew that you could not fail because failure is a construction? And then, to really drive it home, what excuse will you give yourself at the end of your life if you never try? And so these powerful questions, this is what we use for ourselves. This is what we use for our clients. And if you want more of this, we teach powerful questions at Journey Coaching. So come see us. If this resonates with you, if you're saying hell yes, then come on in. The water is warm, and so is the science of transformation. It's awesome.
Thank you for another great episode, Noelle. And guys, if you feel that you have gone through your journey and you have gotten unstuck and you could help other people get unstuck, maybe that is a calling. Maybe that is your purpose. Maybe that is going to be your new true north. So come ride with us. Thanks for listening to Everything Life Coaching. If you're feeling the draw to become a coach, head to lumiacoaching.com/everything. Explore a new career that brings fulfillment, gives you a true sense of purpose, and a bold community to do it with.
Lumia is ready to equip you with the tools, training, and community you will need to reach your goals. If you're ready to build a unique coaching business on your own terms while making an impact on the world at large, Lumia is the next bold step in your coaching journey. That's lumiacoaching.com/everything.
And hey, if you're waiting for a sign, this is it.